I'm Nick Schultz from the Intermodal Spirit, and this is Jenna. And today we're going to talk about this visual guide to the Tarot's Major Arcana.
Excellent.
So here it is. This shows all 22 cards of the Major Arcana, and they're organized.
What is the Major Arcana, Nick?
Oh, that's a great question. The Major Arcana is the 22 cards of the tarot that are like the big picture archetypes. The Minor Arcana, which is like swords and cups and wands, those are the cards of the everyday experience. And the Major Arcana are the cards of like the experience of consciousness and the development of consciousness. And I would say these cards are organized as a map to our conscious development, or a map showing our conscious development. And I think they also represent like aspects of ourselves that, like, as we unfold each card, as we unfold each card, or as we experience the archetypes of that card, like we take that step in our conscious development. And then once we've taken all 22 steps, then I would say we've made the journey. Like we've made the journey from like starting in an unmanifested state, running through all the aspects of like manifestedness, and then returning to source. Like that's the whole trip.
Like the course of our life kind of thing? Like
I would say,
and we make this, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is almost over the course of many lives. We make this journey. Like we may only get to a certain stage in one lifetime.
Right.
But this is like going all the way back to source and like re-merging with the divine. So I think it takes maybe many lifetimes or many experiences to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And so I know the tarot is divination. Like you go and you like bring a question and you're like, what does the tarot offer? And so like it can help me guide like decisions or things like that in my life. But that's not what you're...
Exactly.
What you're meaning here.
Yeah. So this is looking... Oh, that's such a great question. This is like looking at the tarot as a map to our conscious development. You know, like that's the frame in which we're looking at the tarot. And I would say that was actually the initial purpose of the tarot, was to provide us this map to our experience of being, and that the use of the tarot as divination is a secondary use. But like the prime, I would say, offering of the tarot is to give us this guide to our journey of consciousness.
Cool. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I think it's something that people don't usually maybe know or think about. I mean, I feel like people sort of only have a vague idea of what tarot is as divination. And so this other thing of like, it's this map to like the experience of consciousness is like totally like, what?
And what's the source of that? Is this something that you've put together in like the, like sort of, I understand that you've created the poster, but is there, what's the source of this perspective?
Well, I think the source of this perspective is like, I view the tarot as like a divine gift. Like, you know, there's this idea that just as the earth is a being, like the sun is a being too, and the sun is sort of like the being that is the sort of creator of this sort of solar system that we experience. And so the maybe esoteric idea is that these archetypes are a gift of the sun and are a map to like a reflection of sort of solar consciousness, and then also then therefore, because we're in this system, a reflection of our consciousness. So the kind of maybe wacky idea is that this was a gift from the sun or a gift from the divine. And this perspective is just like one that I've discovered by research and and reading. So
Sweet. How would I find myself on the? Where am I on the map? You said it's like this map of human, the progression of human consciousness,
right?
Through many lifetimes.
Yeah. So maybe should we look at it and kind of see?
Orient us to.
Yeah. Well, so it starts with the Fool, and the Fool is potential, and the Fool is like before we're manifested into this sort of 3D. This you might look at the Fool as like the spirit, our spirit in the spirit world, pre-incarnation, saying, "Oh, I think I'm going to give that a try." That whole life, that whole Earth life thing, drop in. So, and then the three rows then are like consciousness, mind, which is the development of our rational mind and rational being. And then the subconscious row is the development of our subconscious and an experience of subconscious and an experience of emotion and body. And then the third row is superconsciousness, which is the all spirit, like the universal spirit energy that we are all a part of, which is divinity, I would say, or God consciousness. And so, and then this last row is an experience of God consciousness or universal consciousness. So as far as how do we find ourselves, I guess by studying the archetypes and saying like, well, have I experienced that? Like the Lovers is kind of easy in that like maybe we've experienced like deep connection through relationship. So like that experience is an experience of the Lovers. So, okay, I've been through that. The Chariot is the development of the healthy ego and like the culmination of all the things that we've learned in this row, like, nature, this is society, this is like education and doctrine, like our societal doctrine. And like when we have an experience of all of these things and culminate those lessons, then we're here at the Chariot, which is like we have this healthy ego mask that gets us through the world in which we can engage with the world. So I guess it's just sort of identifying. And then, so then the next row is strength. This is where we find the courage to face our inner fears and our subconscious self. And, the lion represents, our sort of inner fears and desires, which are kind of co-mingled, and when we face those and make friends with them, then that's an experience of strength. So then it's kind of like, okay, have I experienced that? Well, then maybe that's where I am. And I would also say that this process isn't sort of necessarily linear. Right. We might have an experience of, I don't know, like one card, and then maybe we might skip around a bit, but also they flow as a sequence, right? So,
and I'm gonna guess there is the, just for lack of a better word, positive side or the expressed side of each of the cards, but is there also like a shadow side, like if the card's reversed, or if I'm in the strength but I'm not, like I haven't been able to face that, and maybe I'm
I mean, there are reversed cards in when we look at tarot through the frame of like divination,
right.
but in this sense of just seeing them as a set of archetypes, there's no reversed.
Okay.
There's either like we have assimilated that knowledge and those experiences and therefore pass to the next card or the next set of experiences, or we don't. And so I think it's just
Right.
that.
I just think about sometimes I might have, like maybe we zoom in on one and have like explored a little bit, but I can think of a time that maybe I have achieved some sort of like strength or perspective, and then another time I'm like, oh gosh, I don't, like I kind of come in and out of being able to possess that in an assured way.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think maybe we loop on things a little bit, and we experience them maybe many times. Yeah. The other interesting thing about these cards, or this sort of matrix of cards organized in 3 rows, is that there's a meaning to each of the columns as well.
Oh, okay.
And so like the first 2 columns are like a challenge to ourselves, and like the first card is like power and confrontation, and then the second card is spirit and reflection. So like the magician and the high priestess are kind of like action and reflection, and in the realm of the mind, that's like, we can take with our mind, we can take an action and then we can reflect on that action. And that sort of polarity is kind of like the engine that kind of propels us through the whole journey in a way. Like we always act and we always reflect. And then these 3 cards in the middle are the central transformation. So in every row, there's this 3-card experience of like nature, humanity, divinity. And then by experiencing those 3, there's like a transformative thing that happens. Like, how would I explain that? An experience of nature. Well, and this is also like mother, father. So,
Right.
Yeah, by experiencing nature, by experiencing humanity, and by experiencing divinity, we're transformed. And then the last 2 are this experience of elevation. Like here we have lovers, and then here's the whole culmination of the row. So, and then that happens in each row. The 3 middle cards are always the transformation. But here it's a transformation of the unconscious. And here it's a transformation of spirit. So that's kind of cool too, I think. Yeah.
And so how would someone use this in their day-to-day life or inquiry, or like how would we engage with this?
I think it's a matter of like understanding each archetype, and maybe studying each archetype. Well, each archetype is really like a complex of archetypes. Like there are many sort of meanings in each card, and by studying those individual complexes of archetypes, we would begin to understand our journey. So this is almost like, you could say, looking at a map and saying like, okay, if I'm going to drive to like LA, I'm going to go through, from we're in the Pacific Northwest, I'm going to go through Seattle and then Portland and then Eugene. And like, and each city has its own vibe, and the vibe changes as you go down the coast, and then you're, eventually in LA. And it's like, what does it mean to be in Portland or something? It's kind of like, what does it mean to be like in the Wheel of Fortune, which is like the idea of nature, but it's like, it's the wheel of life that spins and turns. It's like the thing that happens behind nature, like the forces that like are underneath nature, and it's like the wheel of karma, and it's the wheel of like every action that we take has an effect on the wheel and spins the wheel and has an effect on every other being in the wheel. And so to understand that as a concept, to understand that every action that we take has an effect on every other being, and that the spinning of the wheel provides us these experiences that are, maybe you would call them fate or destiny or something, and that it's this giant flow. Like, to understand that concept is to understand that step of the journey, and then to say, like, okay, justice is the point where we reflect on our actions in that wheel,
right,
and realize, like, oh, that choice that I made at that time had this effect on that other being, and now I really see that, and I really see the truth in, like, that every action has an effect, and that every action has some sort of consequence, whether, whatever that consequence is, if it's a benefit to someone or if it harms someone, like, understanding that is like to understand, okay, that level of the journey. So, and that's for every card. Every card has a story to it, and a sort of set of experiences. And then to understand each experience, then towards the end of the journey, like, we reach this place of enlightenment, like, that's kind of like what the sun represents. And then the judgment is this, like, call to unity again. And then the world is like unity. That's like when we're with all.
Yeah.
And we're sort of at one with all creation. So, yeah, and then there's a whole bunch of steps in between. So
how would I dive into what the elements and experiences are in each sort of our master archetype in the card?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of a description. So, like, we talked about
the
wheel of fortune. So here, it's like the great mystery of nature, turning the wheel of life. So it's a little bit in here.
Okay.
And then also, like, further reading and studying on the archetypes, and then also, like, even like meditating on the cards themselves and on the images could be useful. Oh, wait, your question was what?
Yeah, how would I get to know the archetype and what the experiences are in each archetype, so that I could be reflecting on it and going, where am I at with that, and what can I gain from here? What insight could it bring me? Right,
and then it's like, and then it's understanding, like, how each of these is part of this matrix of, like, okay, this Wheel of Fortune is part of the journey through the subconscious, and it's a sort of experience of nature from a sort of subconscious place. So it's understanding the sort of, like, maybe latitude and longitude, if you will, of like, this is at that intersection of, like, subconscious and nature, or like, this is an experience of, like, humanity but on a subconscious level, and that's the idea of justice. So there's that way of experiencing them. And then, like, once you understand each card, it's like, then you understand the full journey of, like, we have this journey through the rational mind, and we develop this ego, and then in the subconscious we develop this understanding of how our actions affect everyone else in the whole. And then we have this experience in the death card of, like, releasing ego and being in a place where, like, we act in temperance, like, we act from this place of, like, both mind and body, like, we hold our rational and our emotional subconscious as equal and balanced, and we act not just from a rational place, but a rational/emotional place. And so, like, that's like a whole level of development. And then in, like, the superconscious row, like, we face in the devil, like, the idea that, like, there's more than just the material world, like the devil says, like, no, this is all there is. It's just the material world. Don't worry about it. Just stay right here. There's nothing further. Just really get into like all that, all your material desires. Like you don't need to move any further. And so like, and then we say like, no, there's more. And so then we move, and then we get this flash of insight from the divine in the tower. And then we move through this whole experience of like divinity, of like experiencing divinity firsthand. And this whole row is like an altered state experience. It's not like this whole row is not an experience of like consciousness at all. It's like it can't be held within consciousness. Like the tower card is kind of about the idea of like our conscious container kind of being shattered by like this direct communication from the divine, and we can't hold it consciously. And then we have this whole experience of divine, this transformative experience of divine in the middle three, and then the sun is enlightenment, and then and the sun is also like bringing this enlightened spiritual experience back to consciousness and integrating it in a conscious place, and seeing that like we're all connected, and we're all like, and seeing the whole world as love, and seeing like that, like the light that is within me is within you, and it's the same light, and we're different sort of reflections of the same light, and different aspects or mirrors of that same light. And it's bringing that knowledge then back to consciousness, and sharing that, and knowing that, and then seeing everything as love, and everything is connected. And then judgment is then like the call to like leave our, and this is like way down the line of like conscious development, where we leave our individual beingness behind to like unify with the divine, and then that's it. That's the end of the journey. And then I guess you could say it starts again.
Start back over at the beginning.
Starts again with the Fool.
Yeah.
So I guess you could look at this maybe as a journey of a lifetime, or maybe as a journey of several lifetimes. Yeah. What were we gonna say?
How has this played out in your life? How has this influenced or affected you in your journey?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. How has it affected me? I think it's made me more aware of like that there's a path, or that there's a journey that I'm on as a being. And it's like, and that life isn't just about like, oh, I've got to get groceries, and I've got this meeting, and I've got to take the kids to the park or whatever. I mean, that's great. But and also I guess that's where a lot of life happens, and we can make choices in every part of our life. So I think it's about that, like how is every choice that I make in my life connected to this journey of like developing consciousness and rising consciousness. A friend of mine once said somewhere, like, I'm in love with this infinite becoming. And I was like, oh my God, that is totally it. Like we're always infinitely like learning and growing and developing. And so I guess discovering this set of archetypes as this path is like, oh, this is the map of the path of becoming. This is a map of becoming. Yeah, so I guess in that way, just like being aware of that, and to have like a map of like our journey of consciousness, like to me is like kind of mind-blowing. Like it just kind of puts everything in perspective. I don't know, does that answer that question, I guess? Or
yeah, I can hear that you've brought this in, and it's been a template for you in some ways of like your increasing awareness of where you are in the path of your life, that we're all interconnected, and that there's something bigger happening beyond the getting groceries and making dinner.
Yeah. And just having this sort of like the tarot cards are sometimes called keys. And so it's like having these like 22 keys that unlock 22 sort of areas of experience, or experiences or something. And so I guess it's changed that way too, of like, oh, I haven't had that experience, or like this experience of in strength of like facing, like having the courage to face our unconscious fears, and then the hermit being like the teacher that comes in to guide us through the experience of our own subconscious. It's like, have I had that experience? Like, have I had the courage to face my inner fears? And has a teacher sort of, because I've had the courage and decided to face my sort of inner fears, then has a teacher appeared to guide me through that journey? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I guess maybe there's also the sense of like, did I fully unlock it with the key, or did I sort of partially unlock it? Or will I go back again and kind of unlock it further? Maybe in that sense. Yeah.
Brings your attention to places where maybe there's a deeper experience to be had in certain ways and parts of life, or archetypes of life.
Yeah, and always a deeper understanding. And it's like, have I faced, like intellectually, I know this idea of like, that there's more to this experience than this 3D physical world.
Right.
Like, I get that. Have I had an altered state experience of like really facing that and then having like direct communication from the divine? Like, no, I haven't had that.
Right.
And like the interesting part about this, the interesting part about this card is like, it talks about, when we go on this superconscious journey, that we're accessing like divine like power, which is like, like infinitely powerful. And that if we try to use that power for our own purposes, like that power, like there's a good chance that power destroys us, and so, before we reach this row and have this experience, we have to have this ego death over here, so that we don't use that power for our own purposes, so that we use that power for the good of all. And have I had that ego death? Like, yeah, I don't know, but like, that's a key, like that's an experience. And then, and then, this altered state experience of the divine direct communication, it's like, no, I haven't had that. But like, I know it's there. And like, I know that I could do that. And I know that I need to have this sort of release this ego before I go down that road, So, yeah, in that sense, it's kind of like, oh yeah, here's the map. Here's the map of like this development of consciousness. So, yeah, I guess in that way, it's changed my perception of like what is possible, or what is sort of like the big picture of this journey of conscious development. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you so much for being here with me for this conversation and asking the questions.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Oh, right on.
I'm excited for this to be in the world as a way for people to be in inquiry and about our human evolution.
Yeah,
evolution as conscious beings.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Wow. Right on time.